And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering Indiana IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow. I'm also joined by our co-host, Kathy Amos. This afternoon, we're discussing today's 93-56 romp by your number 6 ranked Hoosiers over Wisconsin. This takes the women's record to 16-1 overall and 6-1 in the conference, a game behind league leader Ohio State. But let's start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And our banner moment today, Kathy, I'm going to go a regular season record crowd of 10,422 showed up at Simon Scott Assembly Hall on a Sunday afternoon to support the women's team today. And that is our banner moment. A shout out to all those 10,422 who showed up to root on the Hoosiers. We need them to come out to some other games on Thursday, but we'll take the 10,422 as well. And not that we're home this Thursday, but any Thursday, because we have some tough games coming up on some Thursdays. Our banner moment is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for our schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Their new Indiana designs will be released this week. So whether you want only IU gear or other college teams or nothing associated with a team, Home Field probably has something for you. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME, HOME, for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com, and you're supporting an Indiana business that came up through Kelly School. Wear one for the team. And let's take it over to Kathy for the Amos angle and get her quick take on this game.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks. The attendance was amazing. Like I had started seeing on Twitter rumors of, a huge crowd, people waiting in line before the game just to get in. So it was really fantastic to see. And hopefully that just keeps up even for those weeknight games. So hopefully the one coming up will be maybe a little easier with a later tip time. But for me, I'm also wanting to give a shout out to Tara Morin, because with that win today, she became the all-time winningest coach for the IU women's program as well. So huge shout out for Coach Morin, and just, again, her ability to have built the program while she has been with them has just been, I think, fantastic. And so I think there's very little negative we'll probably get into this game. So it was just really nice to see, and especially coming off that big win over Maryland on Thursday. Sometimes you might think that the team might have a drop off or not quite prepared or as focused, coming off of that. But I really didn't see any of that today, Jeff. And so I just thought all around was just a fantastic win for this team, and very focused from the tip off for most of the game, I thought.
Yeah, I thought maybe just a little bit of a little lackadaisical at the beginning of the second quarter.
Into the first there, yeah.
Yeah, into the first, into the second. I was thinking more of the second, but that's, I agree with you on that part. But congrats to Coach Morin. I she has done a great job in building the program up. And with that, I agree. There's not a lot of negatives to talk about today, Kathy. So let's move on in. Let's talk about some of the things that went as expected. And I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think actually quite a bit went as expected. Yeah. So, I think I'll just start with our defense again. I mean, we held Wisconsin to 56 points per game, and they are averaging 70 points per game. So, it's not like Wisconsin hasn't been able to put up points in other games. So, again, our identity is very clear to me as a team, and that to me is defense. And, it just really came out in some of the scores and stuff that you see as well. We're holding, Wisconsin to only 35% shooting, field goal shooting. They average right around 43%. So, Wisconsin's a young team too. So it was just, not surprising to me. I think the way we just really dominated them with our experience. But for me, the number one, as expected, as always, has become defense.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the idea here that just took care of business against one of the bottom tier teams in the Big Ten. And again, you made a good point. Wisconsin's trying to rebuild. They got some younger kids, but you didn't let them hang around deep into the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, and give them any confidence. like I said, we had a little bit of a lull there, but then we had that 12-0 run in the second quarter. And that was when we really put this game away. We really were not challenged in the second half at all. And got a chance there in the fourth quarter to play a lot of the young kids. And I think I pointed out on Twitter that the start of the fourth quarter were basically the 4 freshmen, Sandvik, Bargesser, Meister, I'm forgetting somebody, and Scalia were on the floor, and I'm forgetting who the 4th freshman was right off the top of my head.
Lily Meister.
Lily Meister, thank you.
Yes.
Lily Meister. And I'm going to talk about Lily a little bit in a bit, I think, anyway. So, but anyway, those 4. And then they pretty much got some extended run in the fourth quarter. You look today at the minute. So I like that aspect of it, that we just took care of business. You didn't let one of the bottom teams hang around.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, moves us now for tied in the conference in second. So, again, right with Iowa, and we're chasing Ohio State. So, yeah, it was definitely a needed win. So I would just love the crowd too. That was just so fun to see. So I know you mentioned it already, but going back to it, it's great.
And the other thing was, and again, I'm going to kind of jump ahead. I'm not jumping ahead in terms of where we are in the run sheet, just that, but you look at our numbers, 26 assists on 35 made buckets. The ball was moving. People were moving. Again, that's what we've come to expect from this group of kids and this team with Terry Morin. Is especially when they get it, now that everybody seems to be back and fairly healthy. I mean, Grace is not going to probably be 100% the rest of the year, but she's back. She's playing. The last couple of games, the ball has moved. I didn't get a chance to watch the Maryland game live. I thought you and Amanda did a great job afterwards, by the way, on that show.
Thank you.
But I went back and watched it. The ball was moving. They were moving people. And that's when they're really playing at their best. And they ran some really nice sets today that got them wide open layups.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that's probably another as expected, right? Is again, what do we become known for is defense, number one. Number two is just the ability for them to share the ball with each other. And as you pointed out, there was just a ton of assists again on all of those field goals that we made. So yeah, those are some of my big as expected moments for sure.
Yeah. And I just think that the fact that, when you can play, for me as a coach, when you can play that way against a team that you think you should go out and dominate, I'm sure they don't phrase it that way, but we all, as coaches, have games where we're like, hey, we really should be able to win this one. This should be one where we can get plenty of people in, maybe do some things, but it doesn't always go according that way. And today it did. And so that's why I really think that's a big as expected.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I mean, let's go ahead and move on to surprises, Kathy, and I'll let you go first. But I've got one surprise, and it's really not even per se a surprise, but I'm going to put it in that section of the run sheet.
Yeah, me too. And it is not even about the actual gameplay. My surprise, and I'm sure it wasn't a surprise to anyone there, but I thought it was really cool. Yarden Garzon's mom was in attendance today. So for those of you maybe aren't aware, they're from Israel. And so she was over here, visiting her daughters because Yarden's sister plays at Oklahoma State. But the surprise was actually, I saw on Twitter that Jeremy Gray, the announcer in Assembly Hall, actually announced one of Yarden's 3-pointers in Hebrew. And I'm sure he did that especially for her mom being there. And I thought that was just a really cool thing to see. So, but in terms of the game itself, I really just don't have anything. I mean, I was struggling as I was thinking about it throughout the game to come up with any surprises, either good or bad, I guess. And for me, the closest I could come is kind of that lull you mentioned at the end of the first quarter into the second quarter. But, again, you'll have that from game to game. So I don't know that necessarily I was surprised. But, that was about the closest Wisconsin, I think, got within 4 in that time stretch. And I was a little surprised, I guess, because we came out hot, right? Like we just really came out and had a 13-point lead or so. And we just kind of let them creep back in there for just a second. But boy, we took off at that, 14-2 run in the second quarter and really never looked back. I mean, we led for over 39 minutes of this game. So it just never felt in doubt to me.
Yeah. And again, I'm putting it in here as a surprise because it's overall the way it's accumulated. It wasn't necessarily a surprise today. And that's the continued play, but especially of Lexi Bargesser, but also especially Lily Meister. We've seen now the last 2-3 games where Coach Morin has really started to trust Lily out on the floor. And I think it's a two-way street, or it's a kind of a double-edged sword, or a catch-22 maybe. That the player wants to play more. but the coach has to trust you to put you back out there. But it's hard for you to have confidence to play the way you need to play for the coach to have trust in you. So I thought Lily in the last 2-3 games, and again, is she putting up huge numbers? No, but she's going out there. She's being solid enough. She's not hurting us. And in many cases, she's obviously making plays and putting some numbers in the stat sheet. But it's important that she can play and get Mackenzie just a couple minutes here and there. She played 10 minutes today. And I know it's a flawed stat in a single game, but she was plus 21 while she was on the floor. I mean, so I really come to like the way I thought Lily would be one that could play quite a bit, but with sometimes the way we look at our minutes, or the way we distribute minutes, I wasn't sure for a little bit earlier in the season if she was going to get a chance to do some of those things. But her, Lexi Bargesser, Hannah Sandvik has had some run at different times and played 9 minutes today. So it was nice to see Alyssa Geary got in the game. So it was not many. Again, I put it in here under surprises, but we were able to go deep into the bench. And I think that's going to be helpful. But one thing, Kathy, I will say is a surprise here. And I saw this today, and I did not text you this. I want to get your reaction. I held it for this. I was looking at the Big Ten stats today. In the top 25 players' minutes played, how many do you think are IU players?
2.
Oh, you either cheated or you're a good guesser.
I didn't.
Because it's 2. It's Chloe Moore McNeil and Mackenzie Holmes are the only 2 players in the top 25 in minutes. But we would have thought, I really would have thought we'd have at least 3 or 4 of our kids. So maybe we aren't the only ones who play kids a ton of minutes. Yeah. And we just wish the bench would play a little more. But yeah, I like that where you can get about double-digit minutes. You had 9 minutes, like I said, by Sandvik. You had 10 by Meister, 13 by Bargesser, and you got 7 from Alyssa Geary today. I can live with that.
Yeah, and to be fair, Jeff, I probably would have guessed around 4 or 5 had you not kind of set it up with it as being a surprise. So I purposely went very low. So I am very surprised at that number. Yeah, I would have thought it would have been higher because it always feels like, we play about our 6 starters, really, because I count Sarah as basically, for all intents and purposes, starter as well. It always feels like they're playing in that mid to upper 30s, which I would have thought would have been higher. But that's an interesting stat. So it may be on the surprise side. I was a little surprised, actually, Alyssa Geary didn't get in sooner. I don't think she came in until the 4th quarter. I know she had been out for a while sick, but I've just been, I guess, in general surprised. But she didn't look quite as aggressive, right? And I can understand why I was really trying to watch her play today. She didn't look quite as aggressive as we see out of Mackenzie in getting, when she got the ball down and the post on one possession and, a couple of people collapsed on her from the defense and she immediately didn't try to go up anymore. She just kicked the ball right back out, where when you see Mackenzie, obviously, they're in different levels. So I'm not trying to compare the play, but that's my point of reference. Mackenzie would have, been a lot more aggressive trying to get to the hoop before just kicking it back out. So I guess I've been surprised at Alyssa Geary not being a little more aggressive this year. So I thought she would get a little more run before the 4th quarter in this game. So that would be, I guess, another surprise I have. And then along that same lines, Mona Zark didn't get in today. Do we know, is she perhaps sick or hurt? That I think I saw her sitting on the bench in street clothes, but I haven't seen anything. I didn't know if you might have.
I had not seen anything, but I wasn't sure if that would be, I'll tell you, it might have been Mona. I couldn't quite tell who that was over there. And I thought for a second, I really thought for most of the game, it looked like Keandra was in street clothes. So when she showed up in the 4th quarter, she's dressed.
And she scored for us. So yay.
But I thought, so I know I did not see anything on Zarek in terms of about being injured, sick, or anything like that. But but back to your point, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe that was Alyssa Geary still in street clothes because she hadn't played so deep into the game. So, but one thing we do know about Coach Moore, most things that involve the team and where they are in terms of illness or injury, unless the ESPN crew's in town, they're pretty tight-lipped about things that they put out there for the public. So I don't, maybe Ari can fill us in when he comes into the Workaholics later on a little bit.
Yep. I saw a text from him that he was actually met Yarden's parents. So he's probably still busy at the hall there. So I don't have any other surprises, Jeff.
No, let's go inside the numbers, Kathy. Let's go team number here for you. Let's try and limit to 1 today because it was such an either that or go more team and less individual. But it was I just think 1 team. I already talked about 1 number I saw, so that eliminates something for me anyway.
I think the biggest one that I just want to talk about, maybe just one negative. I'll do one negative, one positive, and then you can have whatever. But the biggest one is really the first half. We didn't shoot it well again from three. Like we just seemed to be really struggling. We only shot 29% from 3-point land in the first half, but we really, we picked it back up in the second. We ended up shooting 40%. So it wasn't beautiful, but they definitely improved in that second half. But on the positive side, again, and it was pretty obvious if you watch the game, the points in the paint we just dominated them in the paint, and we ended up 50 points to their 30 in the paint. So I thought those were a couple numbers that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I'm going to go to another one here that kind of off that same theme. 31-6 in points off turnovers, because we forced 21 turnovers today and only turned it over 12 ourselves. So that was one of those numbers that, again, a positive one. The other negative one here for me was, I should say negative, but it was just the fact that, like you said, we didn't shoot it very well overall from three. We ended up at 40%, but if you take away Yarden, if you take away Yarden's 4 for 5, the rest of the team was 4 for 15. So
yeah. Although I do have to say, even though Sarah finally made one. She 1 of 5 today, so it wasn't great. I'm just glad to see that she started shooting the ball again, because there have been a couple of games she didn't put up any 3-point attempts. So I was very happy. At least she's trying. I'm like, I think that's the best thing for her right now, is just to try to shoot her way out of the slump she's going through.
I agree. That's the only way you can get out of it. So
yeah.
So I'll throw it back to you then. What about individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, we'll get into some of the more individual players today, but we had, just in general, he had 4 players in double figures. So between Sydney, Grace, McKenzie, and Garzon. But the other person that almost made it to double digits is somebody you've talked about a couple of times off the bench, was Lily Meister. She ended up with 8. She was 3 of 4 on shooting, and had two rebounds too. So I thought just a nice 10 minutes we got from Lily Meister. So I thought that was really nice to see that.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw out here Grace Berger, 11 points. Did not shoot it maybe the best. She was only took 7 shots, 3 for 7, 2 rebounds, but she had 5 assists. And it seems like, especially now, so the last few games she's been back, the Northwestern game, Maryland, and today, she kind of is really facilitating. She really is kind of letting the game flow. And she did this even before she got hurt, I think. She really is doing a good job, because she's racking up assists early in the first quarter. She's looking to get people involved. She's putting the ball where it's supposed to be in the offense. And she'll end up, like, in the first quarter with 3 or 4 assists sometimes by the end of the first quarter. And then she ends up with 5 or 6, maybe 7 for the game. But you can really tell that she's taken on that role. And even now that she's back, that her job is to get everybody where they're supposed to be, get the offense initiated. And again, I think that we talked about this a little bit earlier, and maybe even talked about it again after the Northwestern game. There's just a calmness. There's just a little bit more of a focus. There's a little bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Cohesiveness with this offense when Grace is on the floor, and then everybody else can play kind of their true role.
Yep. I absolutely agree with that. And then rebounding, I thought in general was good today. It was strong, but it was a team effort. And I thought that was great. We didn't have anybody with double digit rebounding, but yet we still rebounded Wisconsin 39 to 36. So I thought that was a really nice effort from the team as well. And low turnovers, right? I think you mentioned that already. So
yeah, and I'll throw it back over kind of a team. We held their leading scorer, I believe, was Julie Papaslova.
Julie.
I'm not saying that, Julie, and she was coming in their leading scorer, and we held her to 6 points.
Yeah. She normally averages 13, so half of what her average is. So we were talking individual. One game I thought was a little quiet today, but still did a nice job all around, was Chloe for us today. I thought Chloe Moore McNeil was a little quiet today, but she still ended up with 6 assists again, back to doing what is coming to her and what is needed of her. I thought she played a role, but it was maybe just a little less, I don't know what the word I'm struggling to come up with. It was a little quieter from her than we have seen her a couple of times, but no complaints about her play. I didn't think it was bad. Just maybe not quite as aggressive as we've seen in the past. Yeah.
And she missed a couple open shots. They just didn't go down. They weren't bad shots. She didn't force them or anything. And that was the thing I would say about Chloe, that she didn't really force much. I'm going to go back on one last one here. And that's bench points. I guess kind of more of a team,
Yeah.
but we outscored them 19-11 off the bench.
Yeah.
And there have been games where there have been stretches we've done this show where you didn't score 19 points off the bench in 4 or 5 games, combined.
Yeah.
But again, I just think that, again, I know the opponent wasn't top notch, and we're going to get a much better opponent. We're going to talk about later in the show in Illinois on Wednesday. But we need that kind of production for the bench. If we just get double-digit points from the bench, to me, that's a positive, and we're going to win a lot of games because it just means they're getting enough minutes to be productive.
Yep, I agree.
So, all right. So, you got any other stats you want to talk about?
Nope, not for me.
Not for me either.
Okay. Whoops, wrong one. Sorry.
It's a Sunday.
It is.
Yeah, right. And it's time for the Game Ball and Hoosier Hustle Awards. And I do want to point out Quang and the Workaholics putting out a good stat here. We were scoring 1.31 points per possession today.
Wow.
And we held them to 0.789, or I'll say 0.79. So, again, just it was a dominating game. And like somebody, I think it might have been Royce in the chat in the Workaholics, or maybe Steve, that talked about it was almost like an assassin hit. It was just cold-blooded by the Hoosiers today. And it really was. And I think that really talks about, to a certain degree, before we move into these 2 awards, just the kind of team Terry Morin has assembled and the program that she's built in Bloomington. So, Kathy, I'm going to throw it to you. Who do you have for Game Ball?
Yeah, I'm giving my game ball to Mackenzie today. Again, I thought she just put up an all-American performance again. I think, she didn't play at all in that fourth quarter, but gosh, that first half, she had 21 points and seven rebounds by halftime. So for me, I thought she really came in. That was a hard call. I think, again, with a game like this where we have 93 points by the team, there were just some really fantastic performances. But I think Mackenzie, again, 29 points, 8 rebounds. The only negative is she had 3 turnovers on the day, where I just thought that was great. I mean, she came really close to getting her season high again, which was 31 or 32 points. And again, she did that without playing at all in the fourth quarter. So for me, I voted for Mackenzie.
Well, we're going to need some help from the Workaholics here, because I'm going to go with Yarden Garzon. 19 points, 7 of 9 shooting, 4 for 5 from deep, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal. Now, she did turn it over a couple times, but for the amount ball that she handles the ball, I can live with the 2 turnovers. And I would say this: Mom needs to come to more games then.
Yeah,
because
she came out on fire.
If she can do that when Mom's in attendance, Mom needs to stick around for a while and make more games. So we're going to need some help from the Workaholics here. All right, between Mackenzie and Yarden for the Game Ball. And while we're moving on and while you guys are voting on that, helping us, we're going to move on also to the Hustle Award, and I will put that over to you as well, Kathy. Go first.
Gosh, I struggled on this one, Jeff. Again, I mean, this is a good problem to have. Yeah. I really originally I wrote down Garzon for my Hustle Award, but I think my final vote actually is going to go to, I think, Lily Meister. Again, just coming in off the bench, almost getting double figures. She was super efficient, 3 of 4 shooting, and no turnovers, and 2 rebounds in her 10 minutes on the floor. So I thought she came out and just really played with a lot of energy and a lot of spark for us. And I thought she hustled. And so to me, that's where I'm going to land, I think, for my final vote for Hustle.
Yeah, I'm going to make that one unanimous, because that was who I had as well. Lily Meister coming off the bench, as you mentioned, 10 minutes of action. It was 8 points, as I mentioned earlier as well, plus 21. Which, again, I know is a flawed stat in game, but I liked that stat when I was coaching. So it's probably why I still gravitate to it a little bit here on the podcast. We're still kind of looking on here.
Yeah, I see 3 or 4 votes for Yarden and 1 for Mackenzie for the Game Ball. So
yeah, so I guess we're going to go with Yarden Garzon as the Game Ball winner today. So she's going to move up on that list. I believe that's her second.
It's her third.
Her third. Her third. And the Hustle Award for Lily, I believe,
Lily's
is going to take her first.
Yes, it is. I had to check the notes here. Yes, it is. All right.
Unless you updated it, because she was already with 1 on the scroll. So that would be her second.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I was looking for her last name. Sorry.
That's fine. That's
Yes,
fine.
that's our second one.
But it's hard to sometimes keep it updated in the show.
I
I'm not
know,
that good at
especially
it.
we've
Yeah.
had what, 1, 2, 3. We've had 8 different players we've given the Hustle Award to this year. So
Which again, another good
it's a
problem
good
to
problem to
have.
have.
You
Yeah.
know, and at some point you'd like to be able to feel like you had that many who could get the game ball, but there for a while it was almost the McKenzie Holmes Award as well. So,
Yep.
and Kathy, and we'll look into the workaholics here as well. Any lingering questions out of this game for you?
Boy, no, I just my one biggest lingering question out of the Maryland game was, again, would we see a drop off? And we're going to get into the next the preview of our next opponent here in a minute, and this is on the road. So I guess maybe my question is, going into that game, will we travel this time, right? And so our one blemish on our record this year was on the road. So I'm hoping, again, we can sustain this, take 24 hours again tomorrow to celebrate this, and then let's erase it and prepare for Illinois on the road here. And Illinois has been playing really well. They're probably the biggest surprise to me and biggest turnaround of any of the Big Ten teams from last year. Because what did Illinois won 2 games last year?
I think league, yeah.
Yeah. So will we travel this time? I think we've had some really great road wins. So that's my biggest thing right now, is seeing how well we kind of continue to prepare for these games.
And I think the one difference here, and I agree with your lingering question, I really do, that was one thing I had in my head was, can we travel with it now? Because you have to go out on to a team that wasn't expected to be top tier of the Big Ten, but has proven to be so far. Yeah. Excuse me. And they're actually playing, I believe, right now. They were hosting Minnesota today. I believe they were about an hour ahead behind us on start time. So, but anyway, it has travel. Now, one thing I will say here, you didn't have Grace Berger when we went to Michigan State. And
yes,
I think
that made a big difference.
I think it makes a huge difference, because I think Grace would have made. I don't think we would have turned it over 20-some times in East Lansing if Grace had been there.
No,
I'm not, and that to me was where the game was won and lost. The fact that we turned it over so much, because we shot like 58% that day, but we turned it over way too much. So that's the lingering question I have, as well as will it travel. The only other kind of lingering question I have is, can we continue to use the bench, the Bargesser, the Meisters? Can we get them, especially, and we know Scalia is going to play. All right. Or Sky is going to play. Excuse me. We know Sky is going to play, get her normal, minutes and such. But if we can get Meister and Bargesser and maybe one other person 8 to 10 minutes, I think that's huge. And that's going to be kind of my lingering question as we go along, especially as we play some of the better teams. We'll coach more and trust them to get them those 3-4 minutes or 2-3 minutes at a time. She did it against Maryland. So I think she's starting to kind of come around, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm chastising, but I think she's starting to trust them that she can put them out there for a couple minutes at a time and get some people rest.
Yeah, I agree.
So
absolutely.
Anything else on the lingering questions? I didn't see anything from the workaholics today on lingering questions. This is what happens when you have a blowout 37-point win or whatever it turned out to be.
When you scored 93 points, and one of our, quote unquote complaints is they didn't shoot good 3-point shooters in the first half.
And our other complaints, they didn't score 100.
Right.
So talk about triple digits, so. All right, so let's preview our next opponent. What's next for us? And I'll take the first part of this, Kathy, and I'll let you kind of talk about the individuals a little bit. That game is Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central. The game will unfortunately still be on Big Ten Plus, all right, or BTN Plus, however you want to think of it. But we're getting to the point. I think Ari put this out there either on our chat or on Twitter the other day, that I think once we get to the 1st of February, we'll be about done with BTN Plus games. Yeah. We've still got a few more. And we see here in the chat, Steve, thank you. Illinois is up by 14. Illinois is up by 14. IU is 47-29 all time in the series, including 22-20 in Champaign. And knock on wood, we've won the last 14 in a row, including the matchup this past December, 65-61 in Bloomington. Illinois is 14-3 overall and 4-2 in the league. Looks like they're probably about to go one game better than that, but I won't put it in Sharpie yet. And before today, their most recent game was last Sunday. They've been off for a week when they lost to league leader Ohio State in Columbus, 87-81. So they played well in Columbus. And Kathy, I'll let you take the next part.
Yeah, they sure. So again, Illinois, they are currently ranked 24th now. This is the first time this last week they went and hit those rankings this year. And, we struggled with them a little bit when we played them at home. But to your point, the same with Michigan State. We didn't have Grace in that game
Yep.
either. So I think that changes the flavor. But as a team, Illinois is averaging 81 points per game. So they definitely can score the basket there. They only give up 62.4 points per game. They also out-rebound their opponents by about 10 rebounds per game. I mean, that's
Almost
just
11.
staggering. Yeah, almost 11, 10.6. In terms of shooting, they shoot 43% field goal percentage and 37% from three. On the defensive side, they hold their opponents to 37.5 field goal percentage and only 29% from three-point land. In terms of continuing on defense, they force around 15 turnovers per game, but they also commit around 14.4 turnovers per game. On the individual side, they do have 4 players that average double figures for them. They're led by Makira Cook. She averages 18 points per game, which is 5th in the Big Ten. They have an Indiana native from Northwestern High School, Kendall Bostic. She leads the Illinois in the Big Ten on the glass with a staggering 10 rebounds per game. And she also contributes around 10 points per game. From a coaching perspective, Shauna Green, this is her first year as head coach for Illinois. And again, just what a turnaround for her. And I would think she's, to your point here in the run sheet, I think she's got to be in the running for conference head coach of the year. So I think that's just an amazing turnaround. Again, I think those 2 games, Jeff, fact check me on this. They won 2 games last year total, right? Like not 2 conference games, 2 total games.
I don't have it pulled up, Kathy. You could be right. I know they struggled big time last year. I can't remember if it was 2 in the league or just 2 overall.
Yeah,
So,
and they also beat Illinois, number
Iowa.
12. Excuse me, they beat themselves. Yeah, Illinois beat Iowa
Yep.
when Iowa came to town. So this is definitely not the Illinois team of our recent past. It's definitely one the team has to really be ready and on point with everything. So what kind of keys, though, do you think we should look for in this game?
I think you got to go back to turnovers first and foremost. Even though they aren't turning over people a lot. If we go over there and play like we did at Michigan State, where we just kind of have 20 plus turnovers because a lot of them are unforced, going to be a long night. The other thing is rebounding. Right. This has been an issue for this women's team for a couple of years, that when we don't play very well, usually one of the things that shows up is we're not rebounding. We're giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. And as you mentioned, they're out rebounding opponents by almost 11 a game. And Kendall Bostic, the Indiana kid, is averaging just over almost 10, is averaging 10.4 to lead the league. And for those of you not familiar, Kendall played at Northwestern High School just outside of Kokomo. She was on the same team with Madison Layden at Purdue when they were in high school. And I want to say they won 3 straight high school championships here in the state with that team. So they were a very, very good team. It was either 2 or 3. But I want to go back to Shauna Green real quick. Number one, I want to get your thoughts on her a little bit. But she came over from Dayton, where she had a really good run over at Dayton and really proved that she was a good coach. And I really liked the hire by Illinois. But I didn't think she would have this kind of effect on them. Now, she brought a couple kids in. She was hit the portal a little bit. But you talk about, and I know probably at the end of the season, they're going to give Conference Coach of the Year to somebody who's probably either winning the league or top 2 maybe. And Illinois probably won't be in the top 2 or 3 at the end. But, boy, where she's taken them in less than a year, and like you said, either 2 wins in the Big Ten or 2 wins overall, to where they're 14-3 coming into the day. I think that speaks volumes. The other part about that would worry me if I was an Illinois fan is some other program going to try and poach her, because Illinois has not been a perennial Big Ten power. And so with some other school in a league like the SEC or the Big 12 that might think of themselves as a power that's down, try to poach her away. So, but I thought she was a really good coach over at Dayton, and she's shown that at Illinois.
Yeah, I agree. I started listening to an interview that a podcast did with her, and I haven't been able to finish it, but they were asking her about the turnaround, and she was just so modest, right? Like, she didn't take any credit, and it was amazing, right? She was completely like, oh, I'm just really lucky because I have this great team. They're really cohesive. They're putting in the extra work. I really can't take credit for any of it. I thought it was just really a fantastic comment from her. So I have a lot of respect for her. I didn't, know what she did from Dayton at all, but I've been shocked, and so is that. I mean, they're sixth in the league right now, and they were one of the dead last teams from last year. So the turnaround to me is staggering. So
Yeah.
I would sure hope that she is in definite conversation for conference coach of the year for sure.
And I know they may show up sixth on that list, but when you really look at it, they're about tied for fourth. There's Ohio State, Illinois, and Indiana, or excuse me, Iowa and Indiana, Michigan, and then I think Illinois is in there with some other teams that are 4-2 as well. But again, like you said, they're right now they're above Purdue in the standings, and we kind of had our preseason preview. We really thought Purdue might be that team, that kind of middle or just outside the top half that would sneak into maybe that top third of the league, and they haven't done that yet. Doesn't mean they won't, but they haven't. And the other thing here that I want to say, and I didn't go back and watch the game, but if I remember correctly, and you can correct me or somebody in the workaholic can correct, it seemed like we really struggled. And again, Grace did not play that game, but it seemed like we really struggled to contain their guards in that first game. And that opened up some things for Bostic, especially to get to the glass, and some other people to do things that, we really seem to be at times chasing.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. And I feel like that game we might have had the turnover bug hit us a little bit too, but I can't remember exactly. So Illinois is playing right now. Assuming they hang on to beat Minnesota, they're up by 14 going into the fourth quarter. That will take them to 5-2 in the conference, which will tie them with Michigan and Maryland for basically third place, right behind us in Iowa. So yes, so they're again just not a team to take lightly for sure.
And as Royce points out in the Workaholics here with the chat, there is a logjam at the top, mainly because the top teams really have not played in each other.
Yes.
I mean, Iowa and Michigan played last week, I believe it was. Indiana and Maryland have played, but Ohio State, hasn't played in Iowa. They haven't played of Michigan yet. I don't think so when you get into February, and we talked about this in one of our preseason shows, for those of you who weren't with us and I want to go back and listen to all episodes, we did kind of a preseason preview of the Big Ten, and we really, and then also a couple separate ones on individual teams, the Big Ten and or a couple teams at a time. And we really talked, one of the things we focused on is that February schedule for the teams who think they're going to be at the top is pretty brutal for all. And that's when they're all kind of playing each other. For example, IU plays Iowa twice in the month of February. They got Ohio State, they've got Michigan, they've got all the kind of those teams that we thought were going to be at the top of the league, and that's the same really for all the teams. So that's when you're going to really kind of see the log jam break apart, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. Anything else on Illinois for you? I don't have anything else.
No, okay. I will come back here to the programming notes, and AC Radio will be on. Actually, I will be on Wednesday night after the Illinois game. A little bit of a late show for us. We both will be working the next morning, but we'll be here live after the Illinois game. Be here probably around what time did I say that game was starting? About 9 o'clock. About 9 o'clock Central. So it's a 7 o'clock start. So Central time will be on around 9 Central, 10 Eastern, maybe a little earlier if it gets over a little quicker. AC Radio will be, AC Radio will have their post-game show Thursday after the men play Illinois.
Also in Illinois.
Also in Champaign. All right. And also be sure to catch or subscribe to the next episode of Crimson Cast, part of our Back Home Network family. And also you can catch Amanda's podcast over there at Back Home or at Crimson Cast about the women as well. Our next show, as I mentioned, will be Wednesday at about 9 o'clock Central time. All right, we're going to wrap this episode up here. Been a great. It's always fun when you have blowouts. Well, there have been times where we've watched or had to be on with the AC guys after some of the losses the men have had, and those have not been as much fun as this one's been today. But I'm going to throw over to Kathy. Your last what's your final take from coming away from today?
Yeah, I mean, this was just another fun win. Maryland was really fun for different reasons than today was fun. And I continue to say that this team, and I think Andy Bottoms tweeted this out as well after the Maryland game, they just bring a lot of joy, I think, to the fans. And I think we are seeing that, the more the word is getting out, so to speak, on this team, the more other people are jumping onto that roller coaster with us, which has been just going up and up, and it's great. And we saw that from attendance today. Again, that was the highest recorded regular season attendance at over 10,000 fans showing up. And that just makes me very happy to see that. I live in Iowa, so I can't obviously go to many of the games. I will still plan on going to the Iowa game in Iowa City at the end of February, but those home crowds are just important. And I saw a quote from, I think it was Mackenzie Holmes after the Maryland game, that one of the Maryland players came over to her and said, "Your fans are just so loud. It really took us out of the game." And I just want everyone to understand that's impactful. It's impactful to the women to see the support, but it also impacts the other team. And it's a great advantage to have. And I love it because, they do bring a lot of joy. They get on that court every single time. And the one constant you're going to get from this entire team is hustle, right? From beginning to end, from tip to the end. And, the announcers today even pointed that out. There was about 50 seconds left to go. And, clearly at that point, we're up 30 something points. And Terry Moran's still over on the sidelines coaching as if, it's maybe a minute into the game and it's a 2-point, difference. And so that kind of culture goes through the rest of the team. And that from tip off until the end, that you're going to get 100% from these women. And that just really is fantastic basketball and a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and a couple things one thing before I get into my last take, which I'm going to kind of piggyback off yours a little bit. Ari's now into the chat. He's been listening, and since the press conference finished up, no word on why Mona Zarek did not play and why she was in street clothes. And nobody asked Coach Moore in that question, but everybody else, basically everybody who was available played. And I totally agree. And I'm going to use I think one of the things that and I'm not trying to sound old. I'm not trying to make it sound like that it's the same, but I think one of the reasons a lot of IU fans are my age, your age, the people that we've met through the Assembly Call community, old and young, who kind of grew up with either learning or watching the Bob Knight teams, see a lot of that in the program that Terry Moran has built. You look at the way they play defense. You look at the way they share the ball. You talk about, for example, when you said Terry's still coaching the same in the fourth quarter while they're up by 30 as it was the first 2 minutes again. Who does that remind you of? Coach Knight always used to say you coach against the game, not against the score. But you got, but you just, from that. And then Coach Knight always used to talk about last game, next game. And I think you hit that with that coming off the Maryland game. It would have been real easy coming off that kind of big win over Maryland to come in today, look at Wisconsin and be like, that's a bottom team. We can kind of cruise and we'll get a win. We'll just get a win and cruise through it. But no, they went out there and they dominated. They did, because Coach Knight always felt like you were only as good as the next game. If you focused on the last game, win or lose, and then you go out and you lose the next game, well, one loss became 2, or a big win became a really bad loss, then it didn't mean anything. You were only going to be as good as that next game. So you had to let go of the last game and and focus on the next game. And I think Coach Moran has done an excellent job as she's been here and built up the program. And like you said today, sets the record for most wins by a women's coach at Indiana. And that shows in the way that the kids play, and it shows in the way they play the game. That they are a reflection of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They're a lot of fun. Bottom line.
I agree. So anything else you want to add in here, Kathy?
Nope, not for me. I think that wraps everything up.
Yeah. If you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assembly call. You can also be a part of our private community as well. Join today at assemblycall.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our new logos. And again, we tried to rotate their logos that John made for us in the corner if you're watching on our YouTube feed. And also a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our new music that you've heard throughout the broadcast, as Kathy's been acting as producer today. And thank you for listening. For the workaholics in the chat, we'll be back to talk, IU hoops again on Wednesday. And till then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim. And for Kathy Amos, I'm Jeff Marlow. Go Hoosiers.
All right.
Good
stuff, Jeff.
Good stuff, Kathy. Good show. Thanks, everybody in the Workaholics.
Yep. Thanks all. Have a great Sunday evening, afternoon, wherever you're at in the world.
Great Sunday evening. I'm actually off tomorrow, so I'm going to go watch some football and finish up and find out if my Dolphins were able to do something special, or did they just be the Dolphins.
Yeah. Cool. Good luck with that. I think
All right.
it's really nice here. So I'm going to go walk the dog. So
I understand. I will talk to you Wednesday, and
Yep.
I will, and in between, obviously, we'll text and get the run sheets and everything going. But what was I going to tell you?
yep. Let me
be
end the
careful.
broadcast real quick. So
Go
thanks,
ahead.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.